to sing. That odious command. That wonderful thing. I've missed it so much. The ability to open my mouth and let melodies and dissonance come out. Oh, I've missed it so much. And now after all this time, I can do it again. I was unable to sing. Correction, I wouldn't sing. It had been a few months, and I know that doesn't seem like a long time, but when something so integral, so defining of your persona and life is taken away, it starts to grate. It starts to get beneath your skin. You feel like a physical force inside you. It demands to be let free and to be given life again. A slow, maddening process that you might not notice at first. But in time, in time, you will find yourself clawing at that portion of yourself denied freedom. Especially if it was a defining talent. You would do anything to have it back, no matter the cost. Right? Oh, to sing again. Spring. Hush, abide, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. When you wake, you will have all the pretty little horses, black ones and greys, dapples and bays, coach and 6 white horses. Way down yonder in the meadow, there's a little lammy crying, Mama. Bees and the butterflies pecking out his eyes. Poor little lammy crying, Mama. Black ones and greys, dapples and bays, coach and 6 white horses. Hush, abide, don't you cry. Go to sleep, my little baby. Allow me to introduce this person, rambling about singing and oppressed talents. Granted, this most likely is the last time I'll ever be introducing myself. My name's Dimitri. A rather average male. Save for the fact that I have a voice. I am a baritone. I could sing nearly any genre, from the classical to Gregorian chant, from gothic industrial to God-fearing country. I would steal shows at karaoke bars or talent contests, In choirs, I was always the best and tore through solos as if it were nothing to me, but still filled with as much emotion as if I was the true embodiment of its subject. Time and time again, girls would tell me how much they loved to hear me sing and begged to be able to date. Sadly, it was rather lost on them that they weren't part of my predilections. Now, I'm certain you're asking yourself, well, Dimitri, why the hell didn't you milk that cow for all it's worth and become famous? Well, folks, a few reasons. Let's face it, a singer is a dime a dozen these days, and if you notice, most singers require more than just a great set of pipes. I'm not ugly, nor am I pretty, just average. I don't have a sob story background or immensely privileged life to suck the teat of. Just normal. For the most part. I honestly just wanted to sing. I didn't want money for singing. I didn't want fame and fortune. I just wanted to share my voice the best I could and give it to people. Give them comfort in time of need with soothing tones, or give them joyous overtures when it was time to celebrate. I just wanted to make people happy. But most importantly, there was Marcus. Marcus was my husband, best friend, and confidant. My everything. Singing was what brought us together. I had met him when he had visited New York, where I had been residing at the time. A few of my friends and I had been carousing the nightlife at a bar where outside just shooting the shit. In a fashion, the lot of us had decided to start singing random songs we knew at each other, just for fun. As I was singing a piece by Heinrich Schütz, I caught the eye of one of the men coming out of the bar. He stopped the instant that he heard me singing. I wavered a moment before continuing, and then finished at a decent stopping point. My friends chuckled at me for always picking a verbose song, but I didn't hear them. I was too busy locking eyes.
I'd like to hear more,
he asked. And from there, a simple question and request, it started. That was 3 years ago. From a chance meeting to a long-distance relationship, to eventually me giving up a city life and moving to his home in rural Vermont. On the 21st of March this year, after nearly a month-long stay in New York, and as the snow was finally beginning to fade away, Marcus dragged me up out of the city lights and into the dark and peaceful forests of Vermont. It turned out Marcus owned and ran a fairly small hotel deep in the woods. It was a little place off a dirt road that saw very little traffic, but it was a family heirloom, and seeing as most of his family had long since become either estranged, passed away, or simply washed their hands of it, Marcus had given his loyalty full-heartedly to it, and would never leave it unless he knew it was being taken care of by family. And I applauded this. I appreciated this. I respected this. I never once regretted giving up the lights and sounds to move to a place where the population was effectively 2 people, just me and him. The hotel itself was so incredibly out of the way of, well, anything, nestled as a getaway, and like a little hipster place, it was mostly by word of mouth that the place did its advertising. It did well enough to survive, but barely. The only people close enough to the place were the Locks, Bill and Ruth Locke. Every time Marcus saw me in New York, the first words out of his mouth were,
I gotta get those 2 lovebirds something great on this trip.
Or,
those 2 are bound to give me diabetes.
The elderly couple owned a small cabin about a mile away, deeper into the woods. Having been friends of Marcus's family for decades, they viewed Marcus as their own. And in turn, he took care of them like his own. He would go on and on about their love of the Wizard of Oz, their stories of growing up in the state. And I couldn't help but admire the kind of love those 2 must have shared. It's a shame. A terrible, terrible shame what happened to them. And as things have progressed, I wonder what may have truly happened. The first day we moved in, the first day that should always be happy and full of excitement, was marred. After we brought in what we could, Marcus was anxious as all bloody hell, excited to an astonishing amount, almost childlike degree. "What the devil is up with you? You look like you're about to start doing the pee-pee dance," I asked teasingly.
"Dude, we're here. I have to introduce you to the locks. I gotta."
With the force that probably was on the verge of maniacal happiness, Marcus dragged me out behind the hotel, getting barely enough time to chuck on a jacket. As we walked through the melting snow and the flourishing of budding green, Marcus talked incessantly. Things he had already said, but still, talked about them as if they were new. All the while I listened. I tried to get my bearings and get an understanding of where I was in this nature. As I took note of a fallen tree, I tuned back into what he was saying.
"And she makes the best fucking pies. Oh my sweet baby Jesus, she makes the best pies. And she draws too. One of the best artists I've ever seen. Old Bill's a hand at metalwork, but he doesn't do much these days, being he's getting old. But I think they're gonna love this. I'm gonna have them go see Wicked. I can't stand it myself, but they haven't gone out of their old cabin in so long. I'm gonna take them to see it. So fucking excited. Man, you cannot imagine how..."
He trailed off. It wasn't until he stopped talking that I noticed it too. Even being a city boy, I can still pick up on things even in the forest. It was the silence. Marcus's face contorted into a look of confusion.
"A forest is not silent. No wind, no animals, no birds. What the actual fuck?"
Well, it's awkward, but is it really that bizarre for it to be so quiet? I asked, a bit concerned about his outburst.
"I've hunted in these woods since I was a kid. This place is never quiet."
He looked around quizzically.
"I don't like this. Let's get moving quick."
A worried look crossed his face a bit. I nodded, and we hauled our butts as quick as we could through the thick woods. We arrived at the small cabin within about 20 minutes. A small home, worthy of a fairy princess with 7 little guys with her. The place was humble, but still appeared as cozy as could be. Walls covered with quaint lattices and pots for the eventual planting, complete with a welcome mat made out of rainbow-painted wood. I smiled as I saw Marcus's face light up as he raised his hand to the door. He knocked. Silence. Knocked again. Nothing. My heart sank as I watched his face lose color.
"They're always here. Billy? Ruthie? You in there?"
No answer.
"You two better be decent. I'm coming in."
His voice was shaky, but tried to show bravado of comedy. He tested a door and found it yielding, sliding it open.
"Billy? Ruthie? You two okay?"
His words choked into his throat. My eyes immediately caught on the wooden floor a single droplet of blood. Marcus pressed the door open further. Blood trailed further into the cabin. I heard Marcus's breath catch, and we both gasped. The cabin was ransacked. Destroyed furniture, pencils and paintbrushes littered about. Paper flew around in a haphazard whirlwind caught in the wind of an open window. And laying on the floor, like a broken doll, an old man dressed in a bathrobe sprawled on the ground. An old pistol lay in his open palm, with his other hand lay in a rigor mortis-induced stasis. Appearing to have once held something, but now empty, and covered in bloody fingerprints. His head was cocked to the side, like a rag doll. Dried blood had trickled down his face from the bullet wound that had ended his life by entering the side of his head. A spray of the crimson liquid, and what was once gray matter had painted the floor and chair beside him. The look, however, was what truly choked our breath. It was the serene smile on his face. Marcus let out a scream. I let out a low cry. And only the wind answered back. police came. To Marcus's nausea, the place was wrapped in police tape, investigated. We were interrogated. Marcus tried to answer what questions he could. The only thing I knew was the old man Billy had committed suicide, and the old woman Ruthie was missing. It was soon found that those bloody fingerprints on Billy's hands, where he had once clutched something, were in fact Ruthie's, though the blood was his through and through. A warrant was issued, much to Marcus's dismay, and the police went. After some time of dealing with the catastrophe and tragedy, I attempted to assimilate to the forest life. I had seen and heard terrible things before living in the city. This wasn't too far off the mark for me, and Marcus soon felt safe enough to reopen the hotel, despite the now black stain that marred the forest's reputation in his mind. But still, the clientele came and went with smiles on their faces, be it with cozy warm fires, the lack of distractions of everyday life that the seclusion provided, or even Marcus's prime venison that he hunted himself. Or maybe even the added bonus of enjoying their stays with serenading and entertainment provided by yours truly. Honestly, it was near heaven, save for the rocky beginning. I did lament not ever meeting those two wonderful people, but the peacefulness was undeniably intoxicating. Furthermore, sharing it with the one you love definitely cannot be knocked. As Green reanimated the forest again, every weekend Marcus would go hunting for fresh meats of what was in season. Though never for sport, the man could shoot with the marksmanship of a trained sniper, though always professed that he had never had any military training. But to watch him move through the woods like a stalking cat, keeping me at bay and silent, turning and in a whisper say,
"The deer's right there,"
and me with blank eyes staring. He'd smile. I'd squint to see the little beast some yards away, hidden behind boughs and branches, latticing like a verdant shield. He'd pull his rifle up, line his sights, and a press of the trigger, the loud bang and the loud thump of Bambi's mother hitting the ground. And as we would trace the line back towards the fallen animal, not one bit of disturbed foliage. Like I said, a damn good shot. And the woods were plentiful, absurdly plentiful of game. Marcus, who had lived in these woods all his life, even commented on the population. He didn't really complain, though. More game meant more food for the customers. It was also great. At least, until the nightmares began. As the spring days grew longer, and the nights grew warmer and muggier, my dreams began to evolve from the typical flying or singing in Carnegie Hall in my underwear to a consistent dream. After I'd fallen to the land of Nod, I'd wake up in the middle of the forest. The moon is hanging high above me. Behind me, the forest is alive, but like a child. At my feet, the forest is vibrant and full. In front of me, the forest is beginning to turn colors. And far ahead, the woods had begun to decay and snow. Clearly, a symbolism for the seasons. But while I was dreaming about it, I had no idea. As I ponder, I hear a low noise behind me, like someone writing on canvas. I turn there on the edge of the spring. I can see a figure holding a large piece of canvas in one hand, and the other, a dripping brush. The body is a portly female, but my eyes can't make out the details. I blink. As I open them, she is suddenly in front of me. No noise, no smell, no air. She is simply in front of me. I am silent in shock and terror. She hovers, the sound of blood dripping and hitting the dirt below her floating form. A skinned woman stares back at me, a figure of muscle and sinew, strings and branches stuck out of her from various joints. Like a madman's marionette comes to mind. Fat and bone, only her face and hands held porcelain skin. Her eyes stared at me so vacantly. I looked at the paper. Written on it are the words, "Come home over the rainbow." In confusion, I look back to the face. She holds my eyes, smiles a kindly smile like a grandmother.
Come home with us, over the rainbow. Come home with us. Come home with us, over the rainbow. Come home with us.
I shake my head in disbelief, fear treading deep in my soul. She cocks her head to one side. She frowns. My eyes grow wider in horror. She opens her mouth and begins screaming. Screaming and screaming. I feel a pressure in my head. I feel blood rushing to my eyes, to my ears, and to my nose. A pain that feels as if my head is about to explode, like my skull is about to rupture in an explosion of gore. And then it does. And then I awaken. The first few times, I awoke screaming. Marcus would look at me immediately, scooping me up and grabbing my arms.
What is it? What's wrong?
He'd ask, pleading. At first I'd tell him, nothing at all, and would return to sleep. The following day being as if the nightly horror never occurred, enjoying the day like the happy couple we were. And at night, after the exchange of I love yous and good nights, I'd lay my head down, only to arise again to the terrifying specter. Finally, one day in June, I broke down and explained what was going on. And after my description of her face, he looked at me. He gave me the biggest hug and just held me, and started to cry in a light sob.
That was Ruthie. You described Ruthie.
Every night, she returned to my dreams, screaming, leading to my eventual destruction. Every day, the horror was assuaged with Marcus's caring. Every day I lived in heaven, but every night I languished in hell. Little did I know, as cliché as it was, I had still to learn what hell truly was.